Listen, I don't know what you've been told. I don't know what you've read. I don't know what you've listened to that has convinced you that you can run away from God or there's a place that you can hide from God. No matter your past sins, no matter your egregious actions of the past, if you give yourself to the Lord's love is able to retrieve you and reconcile you back to Him. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, my guest today, William McClain, founder of Partners in the Gospel Ministry, has such an incredible testimony. He lived such an egregious life, but when he met the Lord, his crossroads with the Lord, when the Lord confronted him and he gave his heart to the Lord reconciled him back into Himself. You're not going to want to miss this program. Join me now.
I'm Josh Trim with Pennington and Trim Alarm Services. We firmly believe in offering the latest and greatest in camera and access control technology. With the Alarm.com platform, we're able to offer a user-friendly and fully integrated service to do just that.
We're a light that shines your way. Let us in and you will find security and peace of mind. Pennington and Trim. Gonna keep on out.
Welcome to Defining Moments with Larry Nix, where our focus is touching the lives of people with the spirit of hope for life. Hey, thank you so much for joining us on another exciting episode of Defining Moments. I'm your host, Larry Nix, and let me tell you something. I know from that introduction that you just watched, hopefully you're inquisitive enough to pull your chair up, call friends, call family members, and have them to join in. Prior to coming on the air, my guest and I, William McClain, he and I were talking, and we agreed that when you lose hope, man, you're in a tough position. And I'm afraid, unfortunately, a lot of people, and we were just discussing, a lot of young people, for whatever reason, have embraced hopelessness, that there is no future for them. They don't see past 21. They don't see past 18. For some, they don't feel that they're going to live past 15 years old. And when you get to that place, then you start meandering in things that are not good. In fact, they're destructive. They're self-destructive. This program, our theme, our goal is to share hope.
Yes.
Is to offer hope. How do we do that on this program? By bringing guests on this program, real live people, not artificial intelligence, not robots, not people who are all dressed up and fixed up in a wonderful, nice and tidy resume, but real life people who are either have gone through a tough period in life, they're in a tough period in life, or they're just coming out of a tough period in life, and they've come to share it. Not that if God can do it, but since God has done it for me, God can do it for you. And I want to just encourage you that no matter what you've gone through, what you're going through, the things that you've done in your life, there's not a place, not a single place that you can fall to that our Lord Jesus Christ cannot retrieve you from. That's and right. Reconcile you unto Himself. My guest today is my friend, my brother in Christ, William McClain. Willie is founder of Partners in the Gospel Ministry. Willie, welcome back to Defining Moments, man.
Thank you, Mr. Larry. Glad to be here.
Listen, so Willie has been, for those of you that have been following us for a while, Willie has been a guest on our program a couple of times. And boy, we've just enjoyed his testimony. So when you take a look at, that's why if you've ever heard the words, you can't choose, or you can't you can't judge a book by its cover. When people look at Brother Willie, they say, man, he's very articulate. He's a handsome looking guy. He looks like he's been an athlete, or he's an athletic guy now. And he's all of those guys, and he's all of those things and all of those descriptions. But you got to be careful. He's smiling. He's nice. I consider him as having the same story as Paul in the Bible. That there was a period that he was on a hunt. He was on a hunt to disrupt the lives of people, but God touched his life. God touched his heart, and the very people that he had an ought against, the very people that he hated, the very people that he had a grievance with, now he embraced them, he loves them, he mentors them, and he gets great joy out of walking beside people of a different skin hue, not because not because of some guilt, but because God has called him to the ministry of being a blessing to other people, no matter the shade of their skin, man.
Yes.
So listen, let's jump start here.
All right.
Because if people take a look at your physical body right now, they see some tattoos. And
Sure,
I know
they see a
you
few of
and
them.
I know you get asked all the time, particularly when you go to the gym, what are those tattoos?
Well, I don't quite as much anymore. I think since the last time I've been on the program, the tattoo you're probably referring to, I've actually got finally covered up.
Got it.
Yeah. But yeah, for a long
Because they probably created a little bit more controversy. And even though you tried to tell the story behind it,
yeah.
it probably got in the way of you trying to tell the story.
Sometimes when you're at the gym, you're looking in the mirrors and you can see some individuals, they are just like, they want to ask you about it,
Yeah.
but they don't know how to approach the subject.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Then you have other ones that would come up, because it would be kind of confusing for a white guy to sit here with, Aryan Nation or Aryan Brotherhood tattoos on them. And yet he's standing around 3 or 4 young black men,
Right.
and
Or they see a guy like me come up to you on the street and hugging you and embracing you and you and I dapping one another up, and they're like, what's all right, something weird
kind of
about
confusing there.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's most of the time it's always ended up with a really awesome conversation at the end of it, though.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It give me an opportunity to share the ministry we're doing, be able to share what Jesus has done in my life, all just because of that tattoo. So it opened up a lot of fields for me.
Yeah. So when people take a look at you now and they say, man, you founded a wonderful ministry with your wife, Partners in the Gospel. What led up to it? I mean, Willie, you were a bad boy. Now, when I say bad boy, I mean you were a tough guy, man. And people are looking at that picture. So let's just kind of start there, man.
I mean, what led up to it it wasn't just one thing that led up to it. It was multiple steps that got me there. From marrying a missionary to coming on board at We Would Go Ministries full time, and having several years of just in-depth ministry with young people from the hood. And through them years right there, I really got to see a need. There's so many needs out there, but for me personally, I began to see this one need that if this don't change, then I believe you're kind of throwing rocks in a big old ocean over here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This had to change.
Yeah.
And which was, giving these young guys a real opportunity to be who God created them to be.
Yeah.
And have an opportunity to be able to start having hope, start being able to dream, because, like you said, like we was talking about earlier, these young guys that I get to mentor and disciple and talk to, they have no hope. They have no dreams. They have really no desires because they've not been taught that they could have any of this. You know what I mean?
So let me answer this. So the audience right now, they're looking at this picture.
Yeah, that's bad.
Okay. They're looking at this picture, and then they're looking at this gentleman on the set. All right. And man, let me tell you something. When I've been in the presence of you and you've shared your testimony and you've been speaking to people, man, it will put goosebumps on you because of the passion that you have. Now let me tell you something. Willie, he's a no-nonsense guy. You're going to understand what he means. That hadn't changed about him. He's a no-nonsense guy. he can see a fraud coming from a mile away talking about Jesus Christ, a charlatan. He can sense that a mile away. What led to this picture, Willie?
Oh, a lifetime of, I grew up in the same people that I ministered to. I grew up the exact same way. I grew up really, really poor. I can't even really express that. I grew up without a daddy. I grew up without people being real intentional or knowing how. I think they done the best they could, I guess, parents do. But it's not what a young man needed, especially with the spirit I had in me. I was looking, I had a desire from a really young age. I wanted to be something, do something. I was made for something, didn't know what it was. And, from an early age, the people that I got around who started teaching me about life, it was people that rode Harley Davidsons.
Yeah.
It was people that
tough people, man.
That come out of prison. So I got, straight through, through into a world of just hatred, a world of toughness, and you got to man up. Wasn't nothing about, talk about your feelings and what is Jesus doing in your life. It wasn't nothing like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was a dog eat dog world. You know what I mean? You got to get yours. Ain't nobody else going to hand it to you. And I can keep going and going,
Yeah.
but I remember that when I was 7, 8 years old. I remember them conversations with the bikers and how hard and cruel they talked about the world and how tough it was going to be. And you need to man up now before somebody else mans up on you. You know what I mean? So you learn early, you start becoming a man early.
Wow.
You start showing dominance, etc. And that led to just one little thing, one little beer, one little joint,
and it got to a place that you really didn't you didn't fear the law. You didn't fear law enforcement.
No, I was taught early that laws were made for me to break.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, that was really, I still
That's
remember.
kind of like, was that kind of a rite of passage
Sure.
for people that you were around and organizations that you were involved in?
So most of the people that I was around early in life were what we would call the 1%ers, and they lived under that law, so all the other laws didn't apply.
Wow.
You know what I mean? You got to do what you got to do to survive, and it's all about you. And if you can't take care of yourself, somebody's going to use you. You know what I mean? And
so it's eat or get eaten.
It's eat or get eaten.
And so it just went from one thing to another. So, and you and I are close enough to know, and we're close enough friends to know, and I'm lingering on this picture because it's a part of your testimony.
It is.
But the Lord, and you don't run away from it, you use it to disciple and minister to other guys. And it's a wonderful, I enjoy when I hear you ministering other guys. I heard you on a podcast last year, and the person that is the host of the podcast, it goes into prisons all over the country.
Yeah, she's got awesome ministry.
And man, you've ministered to millions of prisoners. What is the message? And we're going to come back and we're going to talk about, your upbringing. But when you ministered to prisoners, and I've heard you on Prison Ministry podcast, what is your message?
I mean, my message is, pretty short and simple, is if Jesus can change my life and give me a new life, he can do the same for you. That's my short, basic message. That would be it right there. I come in, nearly every ministry that I do, when I come in to a new group or a new crowd, whatever it is, I spend the first 5 to 10 minutes of kind of proving myself, earning my right to be able to, hey, I need you to listen to what I'm about to say, and by my background, by that 5-digit number you've seen on that ID, that speaks volumes right there. If anybody knows anything about DOC, they see a 5-digit number, especially that one, they would know I've had that number a really long time.
Wow.
So that itself tells you something. if you know anything about the system, and me being able to talk the way I talk, you can hear the honesty and truth. When I speak of a story or I speak of an episode, you can tell whether it's fake or not.
Yeah, yeah.
And
People that are listening.
yeah, they know, what
Yeah.
I mean? But you can tell there's no fakeness in me. From the 1%ers, that was the one thing that you don't ever do. You don't ever present yourself as being fake. You never want to be called fake. You know what I mean? And I've worked my lifetime for that one right there. I mean,
Wow.
you could call today, this very hour, people that I run with 30 years ago, and they would tell you some of the things you just spoke. As if Willie told you he's going to do something or he has done something, you can count on it. He's done it or he's going to do it.
Wow.
You know what I mean? I've always had that attitude. I've always had the black and white, yes or no attitude. I've always had that from my childhood.
Yeah, yeah. Well, from the time that I've met you and the time that I've walked alongside of you in life, just doing life, there has been no ambiguity. There's never been any wonderment or wonder as to where you stood on things.
Oh yeah, you ain't never got to worry about that.
Yeah, yeah. So now you're a young guy, and now you've gotten involved in just a lot of unlawful things.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Drugs, law breaking.
Like I said, laws were made for me to break.
Wow.
Simple as that. I mean, by the time I'm 15 years old, I mean, I can tell you how many grams or, in a quarter pound of marijuana. I can tell you how much money you're going to make
By
off of.
15.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. By the time I'm 15, I can tell you how to grow marijuana. I mean, I was taught early. I'm telling you, by the time I was 13, I was taught the dope game, as we call it out here,
Mm-hmm.
And by the time I'm 15, I had escalated from being a real poor kid, learning how to take a little bit of dope, spend $100 on dope, smoke your little bit or do your little bit and sell enough of it to make $20. Do it again next week.
Oh man.
Boom,
At
boom,
15
boom,
years
boom,
old,
boom.
and that money starts adding up.
Oh, by the time I'm 15, oh yeah, I can tell you how to over a weekend how to make $500. And at 15, that was good. And
That's $10,000 to a 15-year-old.
I'm partying every day. I mean, I'm partying all the time. We're doing cocaine. That was before methamphetamine. It was called crank dope back then. It was a lot. Anyway, back then, it was a different era, different time. I kind of hit at the right time. I lived in the right place.
Yeah.
At that time you could, you spend $600. I mean, you can't tell a 15-year-old man he spends $600, goes to Memphis, and the whole trip has cost him $800. He gets an ounce of cocaine. He comes back in less than 12 hours. He's made $2,000 off the cocaine. Now, what are you going to tell me?
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Wow. At 15 years
At 15 years old? Oh, no, you can't tell me nothing.
Oh, yeah. Now, why? And also, why do I need to go to school? And why do I need to get an 8-to-5 job?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
No, it didn't.
Was part of your struggle, was it because of the absenteeism of a male figure, of a father figure in the home?
As I look back at it now, my parents, my grandparents, the people, they did try to do the best they knew how to do.
Mm-hmm.
I look at that and I recognize that. But, there was no intentionality with my dad. I did have a dad. He just wasn't around. I seen him once a month,
Mm-hmm.
but there was no intentionality even with my uncles and them to, show me how to be a godly man.
Talk, Willie.
And there's where I think the football is dropped. That's why God set it up the way he set it up. If you read the scriptures, etc., and you walk all the way through it. And I see it today where I'm living here in Jackson, young men need to be taught from an early age to fear the Lord. And if you're not at 4 or 5, if you not already start having some kind of understanding of who the Lord is and fear of the Lord, well, by the time you're a teenager, I don't fear nobody.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's not that it's totally too late, but if something don't, and that's why I do what I do, if something don't come in there at somewhere along that age and be a constant, not once Sunday out of the month, carrying you to church. It takes a little more than
Every
that.
summer.
Every summer, carry them 1 week in summer camp. And I'm not knocking no summer camp. Please don't hear this wrong. But it takes intentionality at home, and it takes it every single day.
Hey, my name is Kyle Reno, Senior Pastor at Cross Gates Baptist Church. Here's a defining moment from this last Sunday.
God desires an unbroken, daily, personal relationship with us, but we must cooperate. This is His desire. This is His plan. This is what He wants, and He wants it for you. You say, well, He doesn't care about it. Oh, no, he wants it for you. He made you. He designed you fearfully and wonderfully in His image in your mother's womb. And I don't care who you are, what your background is, or how you've messed up along the way. God desires a daily, personal, unbroken relationship with you. But you've got to cooperate. There's things you have to do to cooperate. But look at this next statement, and this is the heart of what we're going to see this morning, and that's this. His presence is our greatest need. Amen? His presence. Everything flows from the presence of God. If you've got His presence, you've got everything. You don't need anything. I don't know, house, car, money, money in the bank. You don't need anything more than you need the presence of God. Because if you have the presence of God, you have everything you need.
Hey, thank you for taking some time to listen to that defining moment from this last week. If you'd like to listen to the sermon in its entirety, you can go to crossgates.org, and we would love to have you visit with us any week on any of our Sunday experiences or our midweek opportunities. I'd encourage you this week to take some time and really think about what moments right now are defining your destination. God has more in store for you. Hope to see you soon.
I know from, my whole past that, and I can look back at it, we can talk all day long, but that would make a huge difference.
So let me ask you this, Willie. Looking at this camera.
Sure.
What would you tell fathers that have walked out on their children? What would you tell mothers that have walked out on their children? Number one, physically, or what would you tell mothers and fathers that are just in the house under the roof, but they're not engaged? What would you tell them?
You are committing
from someone who's lived as a result of not having that engagement.
For you not to be intentional about your child's future and his life, you're helping him to commit suicide right off the bat.
Ooh.
That's how deep and serious it is. I mean, I go into...
That's strong, Willie.
It is, because where I come from in North Mississippi, one of the things you're kind of taught, no matter where you're at, no matter how you live, you go to work, drinking, drugging, none of that, one of the things that a lot of people where I kind of come from, or I was ever been around, you had this one thing in common, and it was like you had kids, but you always wanted your kids to have better.
Right. That's right.
Everybody don't have that mentality. That's the honest to God
Just
truth.
because you have it doesn't mean that it's universal.
That's right. I'm like, what you mean? I mean, I'm like stumped at some of the questions I ask parents, and it's like they're not intentional whatsoever with their kids. I've literally had moms tell me, well, I had him. He better figure out how to do it. What you mean? That's your job. Dads are having 10, 12 kids, and they brag about having that many kids, but they're not raising none of them. They're not paying child support on none of them. So they're just roaming free.
And what you just said is powerful, Willie. You just said if you're not engaged in your child's life, I mean, engaged, involved in your child's life when they're early, you're just positioning them to commit suicide. Man, that's powerful. And guess what? And that's a powerful statement. But all you got to do is just look around you, and what you're saying, and what you're saying is true, man.
Nobody.
The crime that's being committed by young people, the suicide rate, the drug addiction a lot of it is due because of lack of parenting.
It is all back down to parenting. You know, like, go play the video game. Let's go buy them a $500 Xbox. Let them play that. At least I don't have to worry with them. I can go to work because I'm doing my hard 9 to 5. Now that's pretty tough. And you come home, last thing you want to do is have to be intentional with your, rebellious child, right? So you take the easy route out. But you're not thinking about this child's future. You kind of look at it. If you was to go out there and you created this flower bed and you plant this flower, and
that's
you
good.
never go maintain it.
Oh, that's good.
What is it supposed to happen to? It's going to grow wild, right?
Oh, that's strong, Willie.
It is. Well, I see it every day. I see it. I think some of the toughest situations I see are when I go into the juvenile detention and I get to talk to some of these young men. And you kind of get a quick back of their background, what they're going to go home to. And it's like, I know these young men are going to leave the juvenile detention. They're going to go home and it's a suicide mission because they're not going home to parents. They're like, hey son, let's turn this around. They're not going home to that. So what do we expect to do with all these young men? If you start to know the statistics of juvenile, if you just stick with Mississippi and start running the numbers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, it's like, man, what are we going to do?
Well, I know what you're doing.
Sure.
You're mentoring these young men, one young man at a time,
Sure.
and 2 and 3 young men at a time. And I want to get to that point. So now, man, you're rocking and rolling. You got a pocket full of money, $2,000 or $3,000. Well, it's passing through you, in terms of, when you were a teenager.
Oh,
right?
Sure.
So you got a pocket full of money, you're willing and dealing, drugs, selling, taking, whatever you're doing, and you're wide open.
Oh, yeah. You couldn't tell me nothing.
So, all right. So let's pick up there.
I mean, this story could go on and on forever.
But I want to get to a point that you first have an interaction with the law. And I want to walk through when you were in prison, and I want to walk through when you came face to face with the Lord. My
first interaction, I was 13 years old. I was on a little yellow moped. I couldn't afford no Harley. That's all I had.
Your moped was your Harley.
That was all I had. It was right before I turned 13, I think. I think I was actually like 12. I had crossed the highway, and I had no idea the state trooper that I'm going to pick on this day. He sees me. Was Ricky Marler, if you ever know that name.
That's right.
Top cop, all that stuff at the time. And oh my Lord, he followed me home. He scolded me, and hate grew in my heart at that point.
Wow.
Me and that man right there, that man right there, when I went to court before I was 15, because of that state trooper right there, he had stopped me so many times. I had 47 traffic violations from that man alone. 47. I had him so mad one day because I already know the law. I've been schooled on the law. I know what you can and can't do. At 15 in Tippah County, Mississippi, you can't put me in jail. I know this. Let's go and get this paperwork done. I got him hot. I still remember him calling the judge at 2 o'clock in the morning, and he's like, I will personally clock out and carry this guy to Oakley tonight if you will allow it. If you'll sign the papers, he wanted to carry me that night. That's how mad he was.
He was really angry.
He was hot. He was hot. We done run through.
You were pushing his button.
Oh, we done
because you knew that you could push his button.
Oh yeah, we done run through the middle of Ripley, Mississippi at 140 miles an hour.
What?
He was smoking hot. I had a 1200 Suzuki motorcycle. You couldn't tell me nothing. Nothing.
Making money and having fun and
living a dream.
So your first encounter of being locked up was when?
First time I actually got locked up, it was when I went to court on them tickets. The judge said, hey, you might need to be prepared when you come back to go to Oakley Training School. And I'm like, you know what? I'm so big. I said, you know what, Your Honor? If you're going to send me when I get back, why don't you just send me now?
Oh, no, Willie. And he took your word. He took your
word. He set a chair right beside him, and I sat there the rest of the court session. I was at Oakley Training School the next morning. So I was 15. Yeah. That would be my first interaction with Mississippi Department of Correction. Yeah.
So when you went there, was there any rehabilitation at all, or did it just make you tougher? Now you looking at me
It
like,
made it a lot.
So you look at me like, okay, now repeat that question again. Like, you got to be kidding.
They just took a white 15-year-old man who's a rebel with long hair. Yeah, I know it's hard to believe at this time. I mean, I could take my hair and put it in my mouth and have a big ponytail out here. You feel me? I was a redneck, right? And you take me to Oakley Training School, and at that time, I still remember. I remember all of this. There was like 185 people on campus, and 15 of them were white.
Wow.
I left there with a black eye.
So that means you were fighting all
The whole time.
and you didn't mind it.
Let's
go.
You got to do what you got to do.
Was that a way for you to earn your stripes so when you got out, you could brag about it?
No, it's just there. When you get around youngsters, they all want to prove themselves. They all want to. That's why even in the penitentiary system, nobody wants to be around youngsters. They don't care about life. They want to prove themselves. They look at this as a game, that it's fun. You know, that's how youngsters look at prison. They're not.
Really?
Yeah. It's not like what you think, you know.
So the older prisoners, that they don't want to be around younger prisoners because the young prisoners trying to prove their stripes or get their stripes.
Well, if you start learning how to do time, you want to do your time as peacefully as you can, as calm as you can. You don't want nothing jumping off. Well, you get around youngsters, they don't care about none of that.
Because they're trying to prove themselves.
Yeah. They ain't got no training. They got no learning. Anyway.
So you become a career offender.
Sure.
You just keep going to prison for one thing or another.
Yeah. I mean, it ain't like I necessarily intended to go to prison.
Yeah.
Even though the things I were doing were going to get me in prison.
Right.
I always knew I was going to go to prison. I was always told prison was different than what it was. You know, I was always told when you go to prison, all white people stick together and all black people stick together and this, that, and the other. Oh, that's a lie.
Really?
Oh, that's a lie.
So black people stick together?
Oh, no, black people stick together. It's the, the white folks don't.
Really?
No, it ain't. It ain't like
so
that.
did the influence of hatred, did it really cement itself in your life when you went to prison? Because there were various gangs and various groups. And is there a lot of recruiting that happens inside the prison system?
Oh yeah, a lot of recruiting. That's part of it.
Really?
Numbers are, as soon as you come through the door, they're looking to put you in some kind of affiliation because the more numbers we have, the better it is, etc. I mean, I already kind of, the way you live, the way I've always lived, always segregated myself to certain groups, and I didn't have to deal with this, that, and the other. Don't get me wrong. I had some really cool black friends growing up. Don't get me wrong. But we always knew kind of where we stood, but when I come out of, when I was 13, I still remember accidentally hearing the story about my great grandmother, being raped by a black man when she was like in her 70s or something or other. Oh, that was it. That was all you needed to tell this 13-year-old. That gave me something to hate on, and here's why I hate it. So now I was justified in my hate, right?
Mm-hmm.
So by the time I go to prison and come out of prison my first time, I had more hatred then because once you get to prison, there ain't no segregating yourself. You got to deal with the population you're at. You know what I mean? And, that was tough. I fought I think I spent 29 and a half months the first time in prison. A day ain't a month went by, I didn't fight.
Really?
Oh, no, not unless I was in the hole.
Not tag teaming fight. I mean, you were fighting for your life.
Oh, yeah. I fought many a day.
It's a situation that you're hearing the story that your mom was raped, your grandmother was raped by a black man in her elder years. And now that just promoted the hatred of your heart against black people.
Oh, yeah.
And you joined a group, Aryan Nation, that was it a targeted situation? We're going to just target black people and hurt black people or interrogate black people or become terrorists? Or how does that work?
No, it's not like that. So, which there's a lot of this I ain't going to go into because of time's sake.
Yeah.
I go to prison and hey, they call me bald head. Hey, bald head, you gotta get affiliated. I'm like, no, you don't. No, I
got
don't.
it.
Like, yeah, you do. You got to rob somebody. I'm like, well, we'll see. You know what I mean? And, my cousin, he was, he was captain of the Aryan Brotherhood. I got to doing time with him. He kind of explained how things go, and I'm like, okay, I see. I'll ride with the Aryan Brotherhood. You know what I mean? Which, you go into prison and then you begin to hang around the Aryan Brotherhood, and they some solid, good Aryan brothers in the penitentiary. Gangsters, but I met solid, good brothers, just really good people. But as far as the Aryan Brotherhood, I get there and. I've been taught all this right here. Well, when I get there, it's like, hey, I'm not seeing what I've been told, and, which the camps I'm in are only people in the camps I'm in are people that's got 5 years or less. So people that's got 5 years or less compared to somebody that's got 10 years, they do time different.
Got it.
Because these are on the way out, and these folks got a lot of time to do.
That's right.
So they're going to do their time different. I got in here with these folks that are about to get out, and, more or less 2 and 2 did not equal 4. You know what I mean?
I got it.
So, I mean, I even had a lot of problems even with some of the Aryan Brotherhood. You know what I mean? I had trouble with them because you're fake.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's I literally had them on.
1 on 1 is not adding up.
Yeah, y'all fake, dude. Y'all don't, you know what I mean? Then you begin to learn that, where I come from, I didn't have to prove myself to who I was. That was in my blood walking into the penitentiary. I didn't have to prove who I was to be an Aryan Brotherhood. It was already in my blood.
Right.
You know what I mean? But these other folks, they come into prison, they have to prove themselves. They have to start bending themselves to be this kind of person. It's like, that's when you really start learning, the penitentiary system. You start learning that and I'm speaking only for Mississippi. So somebody outside of Mississippi prisons hearing this, they know what I'm saying and they would understand. Mississippi prisons, a lot of the prison gangs are fake. It's all make believe.
Wow.
To a degree.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They don't take it serious. They're not going to die for this code.
Yeah.
They're not going to, it's not really like that. You know what I mean? Now you get into the penitentiary where you get as going what state penitentiary you're in, etc., how much time they're doing, etc. You'll get around some guys that take it serious, and it is serious.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
They some diehard, serious, good guys. But from the way me looking at it, it's supposed to, you come into the penitentiary, you're supposed to die for your brothers. You know what I mean? And right off the bat, what I seen was, well, I got a parole date. I can't do that. What you mean? No, man, I got 11 months to go, man. I ain't trying to mess that up. Wait a minute.
No, wait a minute.
What you mean?
Yeah, you're supposed to be die hard.
Yeah, die hard.
So now you find yourself to have affiliated with people that are lying.
Yeah, you start learning, you know what I mean? This one or that one right here, where they stand and where their true heart is. It's like, okay, you know what I mean? They mean well. They did try to, I guess, you know what I mean? But I guess some of that's kind of hard to understand.
Yeah.
But real brothers, they know what I'm talking about.
So when do you get to a place, Willard, that you say, was it in prison or was it out of prison that you said, I'm out, I'm done?
So it would be my third trip coming out of prison. I'd reached a point, I knew I was coming back for a fourth time. There wasn't no doubt about that one. I knew walking out the door.
You knew walking out the door that you were going to come back to prison.
I told the lady at Grenada, I walked out of Grenada County Jail, drug and alcohol program. I'm like, hey, where's the liquor store at? She said, baby, you ain't even out to jail yet. I said, I know. Just hold my rack down. I'll be back in a little bit. Just, you know what I mean? Because I didn't think I would last 24 hours because of what I was fixing to do walking out that door, And that's how serious I was. Because I knew I was coming back. Ain't no sense, let me just go handle this one last piece of business. And I'll just come on back. That was really my thought. But I had told Jesus subconsciously in my head, but Jesus, when I come back, I got no other way to turn. I'm going to give you a chance. You know what I mean? Because, the way we live life, we play it as a game, like a deck of cards. Every time you go through a situation, you're flipping another card. And according to what cards you get, it's how you play the game. That's how most people kind of look at it, Well, I done run out of cards. I had one left, and it was Jesus.
So you've gone through life. You've made every deal. You've laid down every card. You've done you twisted every way you could twist.
Yeah, I had nothing left to prove.
Were you tired? Was it because you were tired of running, or you were just tired of living a hard life, unsure of if you would be living tomorrow?
I mean, when I started living my life at 13, 14, 15, 16, let's go all the way up into my 20s, and I started going to prison in my 20s. I'm still living this. I wasn't a part-timer. I was a full-timer, how I lived, you know what I mean? Dealing dope was not a part-time job. That was part of my lifestyle.
Wow.
Me hating and living this kind of life, that wasn't something you had to, that was my lifestyle. You know what I mean? I like I said, I never lived on the side of the fence. I was way over on the other fields. You know what I mean? I wasn't up here by the fence.
You didn't have your toe in. You were all in.
No, that was stupid. People that done that one, I never did understand them. You know what I mean? I was all the way in or all the way out. So I was all the way in, and when I finally got to that, I was tired of doing time. When I finally reached that point, the spirit man inside of me, he was dead. He had no more hope left. He was done. I wasn't going to go, everything I had worked for, my homes. I bought my first home at 21, and here I am at 38 or something. And it's like, I got nothing left. I got nothing left but some skill, and all my skill is going to get me right back into the penitentiary.
Wow.
You know what I mean? I was the handiest, friendliest guy you could have on your team for me being able to do what I knew how to do. You know what I mean? You could throw me in the middle of a field and I'll show you how to make money. You know what I mean? I was that guy.
But you've referred to a couple of times, Willie, but the spirit man inside of me.
He was dead. I remember my last weekend out. I had a pocket full of money, and I had bunches of dope. I cooked my own dope. I didn't need, I could do all of this, and it wasn't lack of having people that would hide you, because, that whole time I was out for like 9 months, 7 or 8 of them, I had to duck and dodge the police each and every day. They were the police themselves were sending word to different people, we're going to get him. He's going to mess up. I'm like, well,
it's not if, but when.
It's when, I knew that. And that's how I lived my life, so I couldn't go see my kids, can't go see my family. I'm having to change cars and, duck, going from point A to point B. It wasn't really a cool life. And I done realized that I know I'm going back to the penitentiary. There's no doubt about that one. But I didn't have what it takes to continue with that lifestyle. I didn't have it no more. That man that drove me this whole time, he was dead. He was done. He was out of it,
So Willie, for that man or that woman that's watching this program, and they're tired of running, they're tired of living a dark life, they're tired of lying, they're tired of dealing drugs, but they don't believe that there is hope. They don't believe that there's any good inside of them, or their reputation, people that really know them have condemned them. Man, there's no good inside of you, so you might as well just die and just go in whatever. But they just sense something inside of them that's good, but they're either embarrassed, or they've convinced themselves, or the enemy, the devil, Satan has convinced them, you ain't no good. How would you encourage them? Or what can Willie say have been in that position? You're no longer in that position, but you have a testimony you've been in that position.
So that person I created, he was hopeless. I remember going to what we call 5th floor. My diagnosis, that's what they wrote on my diagnosis. The doctor said, 2 doctors give me the same one. And it said, Mr. McClain, we cannot help you. I'm like, what you mean? You can't help me? I come here for you to help me, because I've reached a point in life where I can make 9 good decisions, but I'm going to make a bad one. You know what I mean? I something's wrong. I'm off. So I go to the doctors, stay in the hospital for 10 days. And they give me a diagnosis of hopelessness. I'm like, look at
A
this crap.
diagnosis of hopelessness.
That's what was on my paper. Yeah, it was crazy. So, long story short of that, that person that I created over the first 38 years of my life, that guy, that person I created who could do all the stuff, that spirit man that lived inside of that person I created, he was tired. He didn't know which way to turn, and he was done. If you're that person, here's what I would say to you. It's either you can keep struggling with that dead man and keep dragging him on.
Come on, Willie.
I mean, what is he going to get for you? You know what I mean? What is he going to do for you? You're going to go back to a rehab. You're going to go back to prison. More people are going to lie to you, and you can fill in the rest of the blank. But I'm here to tell you I was in that same position, and even though I didn't fully comprehend or believe it, I've always known who Jesus was. I've always known who God was. I always really believed God created the heavens and the earth. I've always truly believed God sent Jesus. I just didn't live for him, you know. And I had finally reached a point where I didn't have no other option. What other option do you have? It's either you keep dragging the dead person you are on and keep suffering, or you look for a way out. And the only way I had out, that's when Jesus was the last card. I flipped the last card and I said, you know what, Jesus, let's sit down, see what you got, and I'll think about it. You know? Because what other option you got? Because it's either, and I still tell most folks that I talk to today, it's say I had to stop. And it was either I continue with that old life,
Come on, Willie.
or I start with a new life.
Come on.
And I look back, I still remember being in the jail, 4th time in. I got, I went to the back and I crawled on my rack. And I remember like what I told Jesus, I gave him a chance. So I remember climbing off my rack and putting my knees on the floor, and I'm sick and, I'm busted and all this is bad. And I'm like, I had that short little prayer, Lord, help me. I've done it 1,000 times before, But I think I had, at this moment, I was really open. I was really trying to surrender my life, and I believe the Lord finally seen that. I was finally in that position. I didn't have a plan B. Plan B for what? I didn't have a plan B. I had Jesus, you're the last opportunity. You're it. You're all I got right now. And then I was like, Jesus or nothing, And I kind of remember seeing myself in a vision, as like, I see myself down there on my knees, and I see myself praying. And I see myself kind of looking back over my shoulder, and all my folks, all the knowledge, all the things I can do, like, hey man, come on, we got you. You know what I mean? Come on, get up, And I remember seeing myself like that. And I thought to myself, if I got to get back up and go back to the old life, I'm not going to get up.
Wow.
And in that moment, and this is my testimony, in that moment, that's where Jesus reached his hand out and he offered me an opportunity for a different life. And he said, come on. Now, I had a part to play in this, and my part was accepting what Jesus was offering. Then the work began. It's not, the gift is free. The gift of salvation is free. Any man hear me, any woman hear me can accept the same gift I accepted. But there's a responsibility that comes along with that. That's what I would tell individuals.
So it doesn't happen overnight. There's work. And I guess using a biblical terminology is sanctification, meaning that the Lord, it's a walk, that you're pruned, that you're purged, that you're refined.
That's right.
And you're cut on, you're chipped on, stuff is chipped away. It's like sandpaper.
Yeah.
You're sanded on.
Well, I heard that analogy one time, and I remember writing it down early in life. Where I think it was Miss Amy or somebody. I think it was Miss Amy, and she was telling the story about the potter and how you get pure gold. And they had to. You put the gold in there and you heat it up, and then when you cool it down, the imperfections, rise to the top. You scrape them off, and you heat the pot up again, and and you have to do that 7 times to finally get pure gold. And I always remember hearing that, and that's like that's our walk right there. I'm still, there's still days.
So am I.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
It's never ending.
Yeah, and Willie, I think if there's an illusion that we've created as Christians is that when we disciple or when we go fishing for others,
Yes.
that somehow we don't tell them the whole truth. We just say, listen, receive Jesus Christ as your Savior and your Lord, and we just kind of leave it there, not saying that, you know what, you're going to have some tough days. You're going to have some down days, but you got to stick with it. But God has promised to never leave us nor forsake us. It's not going to be easy. Sometimes you're going to have some thorns.
I tell most people that, I struggle with what the Western gospel that we share sometimes because it's watered down.
Yeah.
It's weak. It's, we want to do the evangelistic role, and I'm not knocking no person that does this.
Yeah.
Please hear that right. It's like, we want to hurry up and like, hey, Jesus will save your life and give you opportunity. Man, let's get you baptized, done it over with. And this individual has a false sense that, well, this is it.
Yeah.
Then there's no discipleship, the accountability, etc. I understand what comes along with that, and I understand why people do that. But I try to not take that route. I offer, even to the guys I go to the jail with or the juvenile detention with, anybody that I've talked to, they know how to find me.
Yeah.
I give them an open door.
Yeah.
Even though I'm probably going to leave the jail or the juvie and never see them again, they know where I live and they know how to find me if they want to take the opportunity.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Because I try to go.
Oh, that's powerful.
I try to go into the extent, a lot of times you're like, you're under a time crunch. So it's kind of hard to get everything in, especially if there's 2 or 3 of you going in and, you ain't got a lot of time. But I try to make them understand how Jesus said the parable is like, you got to count the cost. Are you sure you know what you're getting yourself in for?
And that's being real.
That's being real as I can get.
Because what, I was talking to a pastor a couple of years ago. He pastors a very large church, membership of like 3,000. He said, but he's noticed, particularly not the adults and the parents and the grandparents, but the children of the parents. He said, I've noticed, particularly college age and high school, he said they're walking in the front door, but they're walking out of the back door. Mm-hmm. And could it be that we've not shared with them in earnest, and we've not been honest with them about this walk? We've only shared with them about the roses and how it smells, but we've not talked to them about the thorns on the bush.
I think to some degree and I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I think there's a protective layer people put over. They don't want to hurt people's feelings.
Yeah.
They want to be sensitive. And, hey, there's this thing called what we call, or they call, super grace. There's grace for everything.
Yeah.
What about accountability for everything?
Accountability. And I said this yesterday. I said this to someone yesterday. I said, yeah, God is God of grace. He's God of mercy, but he is also the God of justice.
I mean, when it says multiple times in scripture where God's going to discipline us.
Yeah.
What if he's disciplining us? What for?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because of the waywardness. You said something and I caught it, and you held account. You are accountable because you repeated it like 3 times in sharing your testimony. You said the man that I had created.
Sure.
That's accountability. In other words, you were honest with where I am is because I created that situation. I created that scenario. The man that I've been dragging along, I created that man. And you have 2 choices, you said.
Yeah.
You can keep dragging that old man with you.
Yep.
Or you can cut ties.
You can let him die. Mr. Roy, he was telling me one day, Lord rest his soul, he's like, the day you get baptized is, you go down into the water, which the representation of that is, you're being buried with Christ. So the old man is dead, the new has come, right? That's kind of the picture you see. And I remember going off on somebody at the ministry, wasn't acting like Jesus. I was pretty mad, and Mr. Roy looked at me. He's like, you let that old man come up, didn't you, bud?
Wow.
And it just really dawned on me. It's like that picture of like, the old man that we crucify with Jesus, you're going to have to crucify him every day. Some days are easier than others.
But it's gonna have to be intentional.
It's going to have to be an intentional process, and you got to recognize when he pops his head up that this is not Jesus.
Yeah,
This is not how I should be acting.
yeah.
You know,
But even at that point, Willie, you have a choice.
that's
You
right.
can say, I can sneak and hide and in the dark. I can embrace that old man and do some things, or I can push back on him.
Yeah.
Some days you're gonna fall. Some days you're gonna make mistakes. Let's just be honest about it.
Oh yeah.
Some days you're gonna be a mistake, but God is gracious enough that if you come to him and say, I made a mistake, I screwed up,
Yeah.
he's faithful to forgive.
Yeah. Though there is God is full of grace and mercy, and thank God he is, because, even us, years and years later, we mess up, you know what I mean? But, even though we mess up, and we may repeat that again in a week, a year, that same incident, and God's got grace for that, we got to understand, though, that when we do mess up, there is an expectation for us to turn and not do that no more.
That's right. That's
You know,
called repentance.
We can't always expect, like, hey, well, where's the grace in that? Where's
Yeah.
the mercy in that?
Yeah.
Like, are you even going to change?
Yeah,
You know
that's
what I mean?
right.
Are you going to take accountability?
Yeah.
So anyway,
And that's the truth for some. It's the hard truth, but it's a reality that we don't hear a lot. Just kind of namby-pamby, pie in the sky kind of God. But as much as he is God of grace and mercy, he is God of justice. He is
Yes.
God of be not deceived. God is not mocked. Whatsoever man soweth,
he will
that
reap.
shall he also reap. You can't sin and say, God, forgive me. And God will forgive you,
Sure.
cleanse you from all unrighteousness. But then God has an expectation of you, and that's repentance. That means turn from it.
That's
Don't
right.
keep, because you're self-deceiving yourself by thinking that he's just going to continue to forgive you, or he has forgiven you, and there's no repentance of the heart.
That's when you hear God knows we're going to sin.
Yeah, yeah,
God knows we're going to make
Yeah.
mistakes.
yeah,
He does, and that's why he sent Jesus. And not going to go all into that, but there's a responsibility on your part.
yeah,
That you got to take. Like, hey, this ain't right. This is not Jesus.
yeah.
I keep repeating this bad behavior. This bad behavior is, what you're doing. You keep accepting sin. You're allowing. I still remember hearing this old guy talk about it one day, and he's like, what you're doing is you're pulling a chair up and saying, Jesus, come on, sit down. I need you. I love you. Then you turn around and you tell Satan to take the next chair.
Wow.
Right? Because that's what you're doing when you invite sin in, when you
tell him to
accept
pull a
sin.
chair up.
Yeah, pulling a chair up.
So now let's go back. Now you're playing the last card. You're saying,
Yep.
Jesus, here we go. Let's see what you got.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I did. And, got out of the jail cell, started reading a Bible. I didn't know what else to do. Preacher man finally got there, and, I still remember Chuck from New Albany, Mississippi. I remember grabbing his hand. I didn't let go of it. And I'm like, hey, so it kind of scared him. I didn't realize it, but I'm like, hey, you got something I want. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Kind of scared him, and from that day forward, I was blessed. I've been blessed ever since that day. The people at the county jail, they got to where they would come in early, just to be able to mentor me, just have private conversations with me, see where I was. They seen I was hungry. They seen I was trying. I was going after it. So they done their due diligence. It was like that the whole time. I done almost 3 years on this last rip, and the whole time of that 3 years, God continued put people in my life, different pastors, etc., and to really be able to mentor me, through the whole process, and in that process, I finally made a decision to dedicate my life to the Lord. I didn't do it right off the bat. It's probably 9 months after I got locked up before I really tell Jesus, you know what, I'm in. All right, I'm done. I'm in. I laid my old flag down. I laid my old self down. I'm done with that life. The identity I created, I'm done with that one. We're going to figure out how to grow in this identity that I've started now. You know what I
And you
mean?
meant that.
Yeah, I was dead serious.
So when you look at yourself now and you look at yourself back then, do you ever ask the question, how am I still alive?
Oh,
And
yeah.
why, God, did you save me? because there are guys and young
Mm.
ladies that have done half the stuff I've done, and they're gone. They either got shot, overdosed,
Man.
killed, or committed suicide. But Lord, I'm still here. Do you ever wonder about that?
Oh, all the time. You know, me and a buddy of mine, Hooter from North Mississippi, you know, we still talk about it because he's finally give his life to the Lord, even though he's had open heart surgery, lots of disasters. You know, over the last 5 years alone, just me and him talking about it. And this ain't the people I know from Jackson. This is the people that I grew up with and run with. How many of them is dead today?
Wow.
You know, and I mean, like, we're not talking 1 or 2. We're talking about like this one, this one, this one. I mean, we ain't got enough hands and toes. You know, we look back at all these testimonies, and you know, and a majority of the time, I was 10 times worse than all these guys.
Wow.
You know what I mean? I mean, through my addiction, I can, you know, I've sold people dope and they've OD'd. I've, you know, been in cars with people where they didn't make it out of the wreck and I'm driving, you know, multiple incidences with guns, et cetera, and you look back over this and it's like, I can look back at it now and I can see God did have a purpose, because there's no way I'd have made it out of some of that stuff.
That's right.
I remember several state troopers, you know, even at the scene of the accidents, they're like, yeah, I still remember that one state trooper. I can't remember his name, but he's like, I remember being in the car and they're cutting me out. He's like, son, I don't know how you're still alive, but God's got something for you. You know what I mean? I remember hearing this kind of stuff.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Being cut out of a car.
Oh, yeah.
And so years later, the Lord says you can either talk about it. You know, there's a little joke that's a little cliche that people say there are 3 kinds of people: people who talk about what happened, people who make things happen, and then people who say, well, what happened?
Yeah.
It seems to me that God pulled you to make things happen because you founded Partners in the Gospel. Now we only have a few minutes left.
Yeah.
Man, your story is just you have the respect of a lot of people in this community because they see that you're very real. All right. And you know, you're not for a lot of small talk. You say what you mean and you mean what you say, you know.
Yeah.
And you're not fake. But the Lord impressed upon you, inspired you to found a ministry, Partners in the Gospel.
Yeah,
what is Partners in the Gospel?
Partners in the Gospel is a ministry that we created to provide opportunity for young men, if they want the opportunity, to become who God created them to become.
Wow.
And how we do that is, you know, hands-on, every day. I mean, I'm not the most humblest person in the world, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm kind of rough around the edges. I'm gonna be real with you. I'm gonna hurt your feelings, kind of guy, you know. But we've had some pretty good success over the last 4 years. You know, our goal is to give opportunity, and that's what we do spiritually. That's our number one goal, is to be able to teach you and offer you an opportunity to become who God created you to become, and show you what that looks like, and continue to enforce what that looks like on a day-to-day basis, week to week, month to month, year to year, you know.
And that includes you providing tutorial services to young men, and you just spending time with them. I mean, you take some of these guys fishing that have never been fishing, that has never been out of the city limits. Interesting, some of the community that you terrorized growing up.
Yeah.
Now you live in the community
Yep.
on purpose.
Yep.
And the young men that you mentor or the young men that you used to terrorize when you grew up, that's only God, man.
Oh, it's an all God thing. I didn't choose Jackson. I didn't choose the hood. This was something God really impressed on me. This is the door that He opened. I walked through it. That's the opportunity He gave me.
Wow.
So, you know,
And you're okay with that.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, Will, when I see you, man, in the community, man, you're just as satisfied and you're just as happy, and you're not running away, and you're confident, you're self-assured. It's like, I'm okay with where God has planted me.
I look at my old self and I compare it to where I'm at today. I'm blessed. You know, the people that I'm surrounded around, my walk, the statistics, are kind of bad for people coming from my lifestyle. that try to get out of it that don't make it. You know what I mean? So I am one of them. You know what I mean?
Wow.
I'm totally blessed.
So you're ministering to the community that you once were.
You know, if I don't
You're
do
ministering to you.
if I don't do nothing else but just live my life and just be a testimony of, well, you know, if you was to say, well, Jesus don't work, you don't know about none of that. Well, look at Willie. I'm a living testimony itself, and it ain't that I didn't plan for this. I didn't plan for no ministry. I didn't plan to be in Jackson. I give Jesus a chance to change my life, so I'll quit going to prison and quit hurting people and be able to see part of my family. You know what I mean?
that's
'Cause I've done a
powerful.
lot of destructive stuff. It wasn't about eternal salvation. It wasn't. It was just, hey, I just don't want to go to jail no more. I want to live a life where I don't hurt nobody,
Wow.
etc. You know. Now,
Thank you for being honest, man.
once I started walking, and people teaching me, I started understanding the responsibility that come with that. You know what I mean? It's just like me being part of the Aryan Brotherhood, you know, me being affiliated with these guys. I had a reputation to uphold. Well, as I give my life to Christ and started realizing new identity, child of God, who your father is, and who you represent. How are you representing that person that give you a new identity? You know
Wow.
what I mean?
That's powerful.
And so there's where your part comes in. You got to start owning that. You know what I mean? You used to have this identity. God give you this identity, which is a baby, and now you're starting to grow up in it. You know what I mean? And you know, do like a baby does. They make mistakes, but somewhere along the line, you know, as the scriptures, I don't know the scripture right now. It's like you put away childish things and
Yeah.
you start to
Yeah.
mature.
Yeah.
And that's what I had to.
That's what Paul says, man.
That's right.
You know, I put away old things, man. All things become new.
You know, I was telling one of my young guys, he's 17. He walked in my door yesterday, and I ain't gonna go through all of it. But within 5 minutes, he's kind of a tough one. It's like, hey, son, you're gonna have to learn how to man up.
Yeah.
Okay. You're not a child no more.
That's right.
Okay. You gotta learn how to stick your head up, put your chest out, and we gotta become a man. But we're gonna do it how God wants us to, not how you think you need to become one.
Wow.
Okay. Now I can help you with that if you want to. But if you want to choose to stay a child, you're probably in the wrong house.
Oh,
That's kind of the attitude that I have. And that's loving. It may not sound loving.
but it is loving. And
It is.
And to be honest, we only have a couple of minutes left, man. Let me tell you something. You know, you're a blessing. God has assigned you in this community for his glory and for the edification of these young men that he is sending your way. Sometimes they may not seem like they appreciate it, you know,
Yeah.
but they are, because there's nothing like a father figure that's engaged in the home, and you are being that. I've seen some of the videos. I've seen some of the testimonies of mothers
Yeah.
that you have mentored their sons. You're making a difference. If people would like to support your ministry, Partners in the Gospel, how can they do that?
But go to partnersinthegospel.org and follow the links to donate, or just be able to contact me. My phone number's on there.
That's partnersinthegospel.org.
Yeah.
William McClain
Yeah.
and your lovely wife, she works alongside of you.
Yes. When she can. She's
Yeah.
a full-time school teacher.
Yeah. But she's also an attorney, isn't she?
No.
No? I thought she was an attorney.
No, her background's in art.
Okay. All right. Well, you are an extraordinary blessing, and what a powerful testimony. And thank God for you, man. If you had to leave with one word of encouragement to parents, then to children, young men growing up, first of all, what would be to the parents?
Think about your child's future. Their future is everything they got. And if you don't invest in their future, who is?
Whew. Now to the young people.
To the young people, it would be find somebody that you see they have who you want to be. And if you're not for sure who you want to be, start dreaming and praying about that. You know, that's a hard one for a young man, because they've never been taught to focus on their future, what they could be, couldn't be. I can't tell you how many young people I talk to, and like they're just going to go work at Wendy's. They're just going to go work at Burger King. they're not even thinking what's outside of Jackson, because most of them don't have a car, so they can't think outside of Jackson. They got to think where they can walk to, and it's really a hard conversation to have with some men or some young guys when they talk about their future. If you try to ask them and challenge them, etc., their answers, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But
I appreciate you staying with it, man. You are a soldier, and you are engaged, and you, William McClain, you are making a difference. His ministry, Partners in the Gospel. Go there. He is good ground to sow into. partnersinthegospel.org. I want you to remember this. You matter, and you're here for purpose, on purpose. No matter what you've done, no matter what you've been told, no matter what you see, you matter. There is hope, and we're counting on you. Thanks for joining us, and make sure you join us every Tuesday and Thursday at 11 o'clock for our weekly program, our radio program, and join us every Wednesday at 11 o'clock for our podcast. Our guest today and my friend has been William McClain of Partners in the Gospel. We'll see you next time.